Angel Batista was never just another detective in Dexter's world. He was the one man who carried honesty, loyalty, and an almost unshakable belief in justice. But when fans saw him reappear in Dexter New Blood, old questions began to rise. Again, was Batista the final thread connecting us back to Dexter Morgan's dark legacy? Could this quiet, steadfast detective actually hold the key to a resurrection nobody saw coming? To understand why fans are so fixated on Angel Batista's role, we need to step back into the world of Miami Metro homicide. Batista wasn't the flashiest detective on the team. He wasn't the one with groundbreaking forensic skills like Dexter, nor was he the bold and fiery presence like Dexter Morgan. But what Batista had was something far rarer: consistency. Season after season, through betrayals, deaths, and shocking revelations, Batista stood as a moral center in a city swallowed by crime and corruption. He began as a detective with a sharp eye for detail, someone who could find meaning in the smallest clue. Over time, his role grew not just within the department, but within the hearts of fans. Unlike many others, Batista never got fully blinded by ego, ambition, or greed. He was loyal, kind-hearted, and had a deep sense of responsibility to his team. This humanity made him stand out in a series dominated by darkness. But here's the strange thing. While Batista always seemed like the voice of reason, he was also dangerously close to uncovering Dexter's truth more than once. There were conversations, small suspicions, and lingering doubts, especially after the death of Captain Maria Lagarda. She was convinced that Dexter Morgan wasn't who he appeared to be, and Batista, her closest ally, carried her memory and her suspicions. Fans often ask, did Angel Batista ever truly put those pieces together? And if he did, what did he do with them? Fast forward to Dexter New Blood, and Batista's quiet return shakes everything. When he mentions Dexter Morgan's name in connection to Harrison and Angela Bishop's investigation, it isn't just a casual reference. It's a doorway. A doorway back to the world we thought was closed forever. For fans, that single moment was more powerful than many of the blood-soaked scenes that came before. It reminded us that Dexter's past can never truly stay buried. This is where the theories begin to swirl. Was Batista brought back just for nostalgia, or is he being positioned as the one who might finally bring closure to the story? Remember, Batista wasn't just another cop on the payroll. He was the survivor, the one who lived through the chaos and carried the weight of unsolved mysteries. In drama, survivors often serve a deeper purpose. They become the guardians of truth, even when the truth is too painful to face. Now think about this. In a show where so many characters either died, fell into madness, or were destroyed by Dexter's hidden double life, Batista stands as one of the last links to that original world. His survival isn't just coincidence. His return isn't just fan service, it could be destiny. The writers know what he means to the audience. They know what he represents. And that is why his reappearance sends chills through every fan who has followed the story from the very beginning. The most important thing about Angel Batista is that he doesn't have to be a genius or a vigilante or a violent avenger to be powerful. His power lies in his heart, in his persistence, and in his memory of everything that happened in Miami. He knows more than he has said. He remembers more than others give him credit for. And that makes him the perfect candidate to carry the weight of Dexter's legacy into the future, because when justice is unfinished, when questions remain unanswered, and when one man stands as the final keeper of secrets, you can be sure of one thing: his story is far from over. When we talk about resurrection in Dexter's universe, it's important to remember that it doesn't always mean someone crawling back from the grave. In a story built on memory, guilt, and legacy, resurrection often takes shape through those left behind. And this is where Angel Batista becomes more than just a surviving character. He becomes a vessel, a living echo of Dexter Morgan's sins. Think about Batista's return in Dexter New Blood. It wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't storm onto the screen demanding answers or waving a badge. No, his return was subtle, quiet, almost like a whisper from the past. He appeared in a conversation. A name dropped at just the right moment, reminding us that Dexter Morgan's shadow had never really disappeared. That's the brilliance of it. The writers didn't need to resurrect Dexter physically, they resurrected him through memory, through unfinished business, through Batista's voice. This sets the stage for a kind of resurrection fans can't ignore. Imagine Batista sitting alone late at night, files scattered across his desk. Old photos of crime scenes, names of victims, fragments of Maria Laguerta's investigations. Every page he flips is a reminder that Dexter Morgan's story wasn't truly closed. He knew Laguerta was onto something before her death. He knew she wasn't paranoid, that her instincts were sharper than anyone gave her credit for. Maybe. Batista has carried that weight for years, silently collecting evidence, connecting dots, waiting for the day when it might matter again, and then comes Harrison, Dexter's son. A boy carrying the same darkness in his blood, yet still searching for a purpose. When Batista mentions Dexter in New Blood, it's not just recognition, it's a revelation. It's as if all those years of doubt, all those whispers of Laguerta's voice suddenly gain clarity. This isn't just about the past anymore, it's about the future. The sins of Dexter Morgan didn't die with him. They live on inside his son. That's where the resurrection becomes terrifyingly real. Batista, the man of integrity, now stands at a crossroads. Does he let the ghosts of Dexter rest, or does he dig them up to protect the world from repeating the same nightmare? Resurrection here doesn't mean Dexter walking back into Miami, it means his story being pulled from the grave, his secrets being dragged into the light. And Batista is the perfect character to do it, because unlike anyone else, Batista represents two sides of this story. On one hand, he is the beacon of justice, the detective who believes in the law, in truth, in doing what's right. On the other, he carries a deep personal history, his love for Laguerta, his loyalty to his team, his quiet grief at the betrayals and lies that poisoned the precinct. If anyone has the motive to reopen Dexter's story, it's Batista. Not for vengeance, not for fame, but for closure. For justice. Now picture the possibilities. A new story where Batista becomes the one to chase Harrison, not as a bloodthirsty hunter, but as a man desperate to stop history from repeating itself. A story where the files of Dexter Morgan are resurrected in courtrooms, in headlines in the dark corners of Miami Metro's archives. A story where Harrison is forced to confront the full weight of his father's sins, not through whispers or suspicions, but through the eyes of a man who lived through it all. That's not just resurrection, that's reckoning, and let's not forget, resurrection in Dexter's world is also symbolic. It means the return of a moral struggle, the eternal clash between light and darkness. Batista, who has always stood for light, now carries the responsibility of facing down Dexter's lingering shadow. It's poetic in a way. The man who never gave in to temptation, who never lost himself in corruption, may now become the one who reawakens the truth of Dexter's crimes for the world to see, the haunting part. Batista doesn't even need Dexter alive to bring him back. He only needs the truth. And truth, once resurrected, is far more dangerous than any living monster. It doesn't die, it doesn't fade. It spreads, infecting everything it touches, rewriting the past, reshaping the future. That's the kind of resurrection Batista could ignite, one that no fan and no character could ever escape. So when fans talk about resurrection, they're not just talking about Dexter himself. They're talking about a story that refuses to stay buried. A story that Batista, and only Batista, has the power to drag back into the light. Asterisk, what makes Angel Batista so fascinating isn't just who he was in Dexter's story, but what he could still become. His return in Dexter New Blood sparked a wildfire of fan speculation, and from that fire rose theories so wild they refused to fade away. These aren't just idle guesses, they're the kind of theories that keep forums alive, that fuel late-night conversations, that make you wonder if the writers are hiding something bigger. And the more you think about them, the harder they are to ignore. Theory 1. Batista hunting Harrison. One of the boldest theories is that Batista will one day hunt Dexter's son. Harrison isn't just any teenager, he carries the same darkness that drove his father. We saw glimpses of it, the rage, the violent impulses, the pull toward something sinister. Some fans believe Batista could become the man who recognizes those signs. Imagine Batista, older and wiser, slowly piecing together who Harrison really is. Not just Dexter's son, but a boy walking dangerously close to his father's bloody footsteps. This theory has weight because Batista always believed in protecting the innocent. If Harrison threatens to become another predator, Batista would see it as his duty to stop him. But here's the twist: would he do it with the cold determination of a cop, or with the quiet sadness of a man who once knew and cared for Harrison's father? That tension, justice versus compassion, would make their dynamic electric theory too. The last link to Miami Metro Another Theory is less about hunting and more about connection. Fans argue that Batista is the last living bridge between the old Dexter world and the new one. Deborah's gone. Lagerta is gone. Quinn vanished from the story, but Batista remains. That makes him the keeper of memory, the last survivor who knows how everything began. This theory suggests that Batista's purpose isn't to destroy Harrison, but to remind him who his father really was. Harrison never saw the whole picture. He only knew fragments, shadows, half-truths, but Batista, he lived it. He saw Lagerta die believing in Dexter's guilt. He felt the tension in every unsolved case. He may be the only one who can tell Harrison the full story, and in doing so, resurrect Dexter's legend in a way that no flashback ever could. Theory 3, the secret files. And then there's the theory that turns Batista from a loyal detective into a silent archivist of truth. Some fans believe Batista has spent years quietly gathering evidence, notes, reports, files Lagerta left behind. Maybe he never had enough to prove anything. Maybe he was too loyal to pull the trigger back then. But now, with Dexter's death confirmed and Harrison's presence raising new suspicions, those secret files could resurface. Imagine Batista opening a drawer and pulling out a box labeled with a single name, Morgan. Inside are fragments of a puzzle that was never solved: blood reports, witness statements, oddities in Dexter's cases. To the world, Dexter Morgan was a brilliant blood spatter analyst. To Batista, those files might tell a very different story. A story he's been waiting years to finish. Theory 4, Batista as a mentor, of course. Not all theories paint Batista as a hunter or accuser. Some fans see him as Harrison's unlikely guide. Think about it. Batista has always been more than just a detective. He's been a father, a friend, a man who tried often clumsily, but sincerely, to look after those around him. Maybe, instead of chasing Harrison, he could become the one to save him. This theory imagines Batista stepping into the role Dexter never could, a true father figure. Someone who teaches Harrison discipline, morality, and the strength to resist. The dark passenger inside him. It's a softer take, but one that carries deep emotional weight. After all, what could be more dramatic than Dexter's son being saved not by another killer, but by the man who once stood closest to exposing Dexter himself? Why these theories stick? The reason these theories refuse to fade is because they all make sense in their own way. Batista was always more than comic relief or background noise. He was the beating heart of Miami Metro, the one character who balanced warmth with grit, loyalty with justice. Fans see him as unfinished business, and in a world like Dexter's, unfinished business never stays buried. Whether Batista becomes a hunter, a mentor, a witness, or a keeper of secrets, each theory points toward the same truth: his story isn't over. The writers left his door open for a reason, and fans can't stop peering through the crack, wondering what waits on the other side. And maybe that's the point. Batista's very presence has become a theory in itself. He doesn't have to say much. He doesn't have to act on anything yet. His silence, his survival, his reappearance, it's enough to keep the resurrection of Dexter alive in the minds of fans everywhere, because in Dexter's universe, nothing ever truly dies. Not the past, not the darkness, and certainly not the characters who hold the keys to secrets we still haven't heard. Asterisk, in a story like Dexter, where every character carries scars and every ending leaves shadows, some figures rise above the rest, not because they're the loudest, not because they shed the most blood, but because they embody something deeper. Angel Batista is one of those figures. And that's why these theories, as wild as they may sound, simply refuse to disappear. They cling to him because he represents more than himself. He represents everything Dexter tried to outrun. Fans can't ignore Batista because he is the embodiment of memory. While other characters were destroyed by Dexter's darkness, Batista endured. He lived through Lagarda's suspicions. He lived through Deborah's tragedies. He lived through every storm that should have broken him, but he carried on. That resilience makes him dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a way that makes him capable of resurrecting a past everyone else has tried to bury. He is the walking proof that the story isn't over, and in a series obsessed with morality, Batista stands as the clearest moral compass. Dexter was a man torn between justice and his own hunger for blood. Deborah was torn between love and horror. Even Harrison is torn between the desire for normalcy and the pull of his father's dark passenger. But Batista? He is steady. He believes in truth. He believes in law. He believes that the past matters. That makes him a unique kind of threat to Dexter's legacy because he isn't clouded by guilt or compromise. He's clean, and clean characters in dirty worlds have the sharpest edges. This is why the theories around him matter so much. Batista hunting Harrison isn't just a thriller plot, it's the symbolic return of justice chasing sin. Batista revealing secret files isn't just a twist, it's the weight of truth refusing to stay buried. Batista mentoring Harrison isn't just fanfiction, it's the hope that light might finally triumph over darkness. Each theory resonates because it fits the soul of the story. And every soul in Dexter's world has always been about conflict between what we are and what we're supposed to be, but here's the truth fans feel in their bones. Batista's story is unfinished. And unfinished characters in Dexter's universe always come back to haunt us. His reappearance in New Blood wasn't random. It wasn't a throwaway cameo. It was intentional. It was a seed planted in the soil of a story that has been growing darker for over a decade. The writers know what Batista means. They know he's the survivor, the heart, the reminder. That makes him dangerous, and it makes him essential. So when fans cling to these theories, they're not just spinning wild ideas. They're answering a call that the show itself has already whispered. Why bring Batista back at all if he isn't meant for more? Why remind us of his connection to Lagarda, of his connection to Dexter, of his knowledge of the past? In television, no detail is ever truly wasted, and Batista's detail is too sharp to be ignored. That's why fans can't let go. Because in Angel Batista, we see both the possibility of justice and the possibility of resurrection. He could be the man who saves Harrison, or the man who destroys him. He could be the one who buries Dexter forever, or the one who drags his name back into the world, alive again through truth. Either way, Batista becomes the hinge of the story, the quiet detective who may hold the power to decide whether Dexter's shadow finally dies, or whether it rises once more, and maybe that's the most haunting part. Batista doesn't need to pick up a knife. He doesn't need to stalk alleys or spill blood. All he has to do is open his mouth. All he has to do is tell the world what he knows. And in that moment, Dexter would live again, not as a man, but as a story. A story too heavy to ignore. A story that would consume Harrison, consume Batista, and consume us, the fans who have followed every drop of blood, every whisper of suspicion, every heartbeat of darkness. So we end with the question that matters most. Is Angel Batista the guardian of justice, standing tall against the ghosts of the past? Or is he the harbinger, the man destined to resurrect Dexter in a way none of us could have expected? That's the tension. That's the power. That's why fans can't ignore these theories. Because deep down, we all know something. Dexter Morgan's story isn't finished. And Angel Batista might be the one who proves it.